Everybody, it's Amr Zahir. And for white people and the Biden campaign, that's Amr Zar. As you all know, along with comedy, I'm a political and social activist. Actually, my comedy is activism. I've twice been a national surrogate for presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, primarily because he changed the conversation on Palestine at the highest levels of national politics. And look, when it comes to political activism, my number one issue is Palestine. My number two issue is taxes. Just kidding. It's Palestine too, as is number 3, 4, and 5. Now, before I continue, let me say this. I studied Islamic law during graduate school and law school. I even taught about it. And there's a rule I'm remembering during this election. Eating pork, as we all know, is prohibited. However, in cases of extreme hunger out of dire necessity without desire or excess, you're allowed to eat ham to survive. Just keep that in mind for this video. So, like I said, I'm a Palestine-loving Bernie Sanders progressive. So let me be clear, I am not voting for this guy. And neither should you. He's done stupid and damaging things. He's a nativist, a white nationalist, a racist. He vilifies people of color. He puts kids in cages. And he says this:
I love Israel. I'm very pro-Israel.
He bows down to Israel for domestic evangelicals who think Jesus is from Texas. He doesn't know what Zionism is or any of its history. Like my mom said when she first heard him speak, I don't think he's ever read a book. True that. Yes, our current president clearly hates Palestine and Palestinians. He moved the embassy, he cut funding, he proposed the stupidest deal I've ever seen. But here's the thing, as a Palestinian, I don't determine what I'm willing to accept based on his idiocy. Trump is not the measuring stick, my people are. And I'll be honest with you, when it comes to Palestine, these two scare the hell out of me.
It's great to be here. It's great to be here.
Good morning, AIPAC. Good morning. What an honor.
They are pro-Israel Zionist AIPAC lackeys. I am clear-eyed about that. But remember that rule about Islamic law? Trump is the extreme hunger, and these guys are the ham in the middle of the desert with no hope in sight. So I'm gonna vote for them, but it's not because I think they're good for Palestinians. They're not. Stuff like this is not okay.
Having grown up in the Bay Area, I fondly remember those Jewish National Fund boxes that we would use to collect donations to plant trees for Israel. Years later, when I visited Israel for the first time, I saw the fruits of that effort and the Israeli ingenuity that has truly made a desert bloom.
Making the desert bloom is one of the most racist Zionist myths ever invented. Before 1948, we Palestinians had a centuries-long, thriving, vibrant civilization. We still do. The creation of Israel turned almost 1 million of us, 5 million today, into stateless, wandering refugees. Our right of return to our homeland has been blocked. Our culture has been vilified. Our existence has been denied. Being Palestinian means constantly reminding everyone that we are indeed human beings. Israel didn't make the desert bloom, they kicked all the flowers out. Despite all that, of course, we've been wildly successful, hopeful, and resilient. We flourish in every circumstance precisely because we come from a proud history of almost 5,000 years, because the desert was already blooming. We always do well wherever we are. We work hard, but we never go on vacation. We don't like to leave our house for more than 2 or 3 days. We remember what happened last time we did that. So, Senator Harris, saying Israel made the desert bloom erases our history and humanity. It's contemptuous, it's glib, it's racist. It's a really hammy thing to say. Maybe you should read a book too. And while we're at it, this kind of talk isn't okay either.
I used to say, if there were no Israel, we'd have to invent one.
Saying that is like, gross. It's like a whole baked ham. First of all, America and Europe already did invent Israel. But more importantly, saying that is like a knife in the heart of every Palestinian.
And it was in the strongest terms that we vigorously opposed the Palestinian bid for non-member observer status in the General Assembly. And we will continue to oppose any efforts to establish a state of Palestine through unilateral actions.
Israel has meant our dispossession, our disenfranchisement, our exile. It's meant our humiliation, our oppression, and our murder. All things that you've justified in the past, Mr. Vice President.
When Israel was isolated in the aftermath of the Gaza flotilla, the defense minister and I, and Bibi and I, spent a lot of time on that phone. One thing was made clear. Israel had the right to impose that blockade.
Next time, just say, if there weren't an Israel, we'd have to invent one, inshallah. And here's some more.
Israel's legitimacy and our support for it is not a matter of debate.
Bacon.
Our job is to make sure that there's always an Israel.
Sausage. And here's another thing. When it comes to the Democratic Party, we Palestinians are asked to act differently than everyone else. Sure, we're included, but so are our oppressors. The black community isn't asked to find common ground with white nationalists. The Latino community isn't asked to bargain with those armed vigilantes on the border. We Palestinians and Arabs, however, are commanded to compromise for the greater good with ultra-Zionist groups who literally believe that our homeland should have less of us in it. And then we're supposed to stay loyal when those groups tell the Democratic Party that we don't belong. That's not okay. Here's my biggest fear. They win. There's a parade. We defeat evil. Blind bipartisan support for Israel is fully resurrected. A pair of smart ideological Zionists protect Israel at every turn. Other communities get some tangible payback for their votes, and we Palestinians and Arabs are thrown under the bus. I'll practice coalition politics like Bernie asked us to do. I'll vote for them, but they're just lucky they're running against a guy who has spent the last 4 years auditioning for CEO of the KKK.
Ilhan Omar.
And you know what? I'm still gonna fight at every turn, even before I vote for them. I'm not gonna pretend to be happy about it. I'm not gonna pretend to be excited about it. And I'm not gonna pretend that it's good for Palestinians, because it's not. And finally, there's one more thing about that rule about eating pork in cases of extreme hunger. When the extreme hunger is gone, the prohibition on consuming it goes back into effect. So when this guy is gone,
just remember, Israel, I love you.
Don't forget, there's still ham. Thanks for watching.
I am a Zionist.
That's like a triple bacon cheeseburger.